And now today's featured speaker is Akeiva Ellis, MSFP, class of 18. Akeiva is a financial planner and educator and is also a financial education specialist at Ballantine Partners, LLC, a wealth management firm based in the Boston, Massachusetts area, serving high net worth individuals and families. At Ballantine, Akeiva serves as co-leader of the firm's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. Akeiva is also the founder of The Bemused, a financial literacy brand catering to young adults using YouTube video content and a formal education program called the Adulting Boot Camp. That she has a session coming up soon, so be in touch with her if you're interested. Akeiva has been quoted in articles for the Boston Globe, Op Loans, Tiller, and Bankrate. She's also been a featured guest on Plan Stronger TV and on the Breaking Money Silence podcast. Akeiva holds a master's degree in financial planning from Bentley, and she is one of the youngest certified public accountants and certified financial planner professionals in the nation and has a passion for helping young adults like herself build wealth. Without further ado, please join me in virtually welcoming Akeiva. Thanks for joining us, Akeiva.
Thank you so much, Emily. Thanks for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be here, to be back with the Bentley community, to talk about a topic that is very exciting and interesting for me and hopefully for you as well, and that's money, specifically setting smart money goals for 2021. Of course, this is our New Year, New You series, so we want to start off the new year fresh with some great money goals that we're all going to achieve for the new year. So this webinar is for you if you want to know how are you really doing financially, asking yourself that question. Or if you want to set personal money goals that matter and that you'll actually stick to. So if any of those things sound like you, you're in the right place. And what we're here to do today is essentially two things. First thing we're going to do is learn how to assess our financial health, and we're going to create smart money goals for the upcoming year. And as Emily said, we're going to try to leave some sufficient time at the end for any money questions that you have as well. So we will do that toward the end. And here's how to get the most value out of our time together. Removing distractions is always great if you can. I know some of us might have small children running around or different things going on, but to get the most value out of our time together, remove distractions as much as possible. And also take notes if that's something that you feel inclined to do so that this information can really stick with you as you go throughout your year and really tackle your financial goals. And I really hope that you guys stay toward the end because I have a very special gift for you, which is my free net worth template. And net worth essentially gives you a snapshot of your financial situation, and it can be a really helpful tool when setting financial goals. So make sure you stay all the way to the end so I can give you the link to make sure you go and download that because it will be a very helpful resource. So I know Emily just introduced me briefly, but I also want to tell you a little bit more about myself and what I do. So I am a financial education specialist at Ballantine Partners, which is actually based in Waltham, right down the road from the Bentley campus. And I've been there since I started at Bentley, and it's been a great place to grow my career. So I get to do a lot of fun things there and working with high net worth and ultra high net worth clients and their families. I also do YouTube videos when I'm not at my 9-to-5. You can catch me talking about money on the internet, specifically on YouTube. And my YouTube channel is called The Bemused that I run with my husband. And I'm also the creator of the Adulting Boot Camp, which is essentially the place where I get to work with young adults just like me trying to figure out this whole money game. And so I walk you through step by step, kind of the different steps to becoming more financially literate and also learning the skills that you need to achieve your financial goals. As was stated, I have a master's degree in financial planning from Bentley, and I'm also the daughter of immigrants. And I like to say that because it informs my worldview and the way that I teach and I speak about money and the different life experiences that people have when they bring to their financial situation and their financial story. And I also have student loans, like many people might have here. So I also like to state that as well, because I'm working through and creating my own financial goals and tackling them right alongside all of you. So it's just a little bit more about who I am. So now let's jump in. I want to introduce you first to a concept called the hierarchy of financial needs. So I'm sure most, if not all of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this follows a similar pattern and philosophy. So the hierarchy of financial needs provides a framework for evaluating your economic, your financial well-being. So as you can see, it starts at the foundation with basic necessities, and you work your way up to the legacy. So first, let's just start with the foundation, cash flow and basic needs. The first thing that we want to make sure we have secure is our necessities. We want to make sure we have food in our stomachs, clothes on our backs, and a roof over our head. That is, the bare minimum at all costs. We want to make sure that at its core is protected. And then once we've covered those things, we move on to the security and safety phase, where we tackle goals that will protect our earnings and our assets. And then as we move up from there, we go into the accumulating assets, accumulating wealth phase, where we really focus on things like investing and paying down debt, those kinds of activities. And these activities just continue to build and build on each other to create a healthy financial life. And then the top levels of the pyramid would include activities such as having fully funded retirement, saving for kids' education, estate planning, things like that you'd find toward the top 3 levels of the pyramid. Now, so the first thing we're going to do today is assess our financial health. And the financial health assessment will focus on the 3 bottom areas of the pyramid primarily. And the pyramid will also help us determine 1, what our goals should be, and 2, which ones we should tackle first. Helps us create and prioritize our goals. So now let's go into knowing our numbers. 6 simple questions we want to ask ourselves to assess our financial health. The first one revolves around cash flow. This is the first kind of number we want to know. So I have blank, fill in the dollar amount here, left over each month after paying my basic living expenses. So again, that's speaking to kind of the lower levels of the pyramid. Do we have enough money to cover our basic necessities of life? And so covering food, housing, daily expenses, ensuring the fundamentals are taken care of. So that number should be positive, ideally, and hopefully significantly positive when expressed as a percentage of your income. And so if you feel like that number is not necessarily where you want it to be, maybe it's very low, maybe it's even negative and you're relying on other sources to meet your basic expenses. Now you can kind of think of potential solutions to help mitigate that and things that you can turn into goals. So for example, if that is a low or negative number, you might set goals around either cutting expenses or increasing your income. And a lot of people like to talk about cutting expenses, but I also think increasing your income can be a really powerful way to achieve that. You don't always have to cut corners all the time. We can also try to find different ways to increase our income. And to meet this goal, it can also include things like taking advantage of public benefits or other programs, things that will help us to have our basic needs secured. So that's the first question, the first metric, the first number that we want to know in terms of assessing our financial health. The second revolves around credit. And now I put credit in this kind of fundamental lower level of the pyramid goal because credit is important for so many different reasons, including renting an apartment, getting a loan of any sort, such as a mortgage and things like that, which then tie into those basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. You don't want to have your credit score be the reason why you can't secure a place to live. So that's why this is listed here. So you want to know, and I put specifically a FICO score 8, because not all credit scores are created equal. And there are many different types of credit rating models, but the most popular is the Fair Isaac Corporation, or FICO's score 8. And now, how do I find my FICO score 8, you might ask? So many financial institutions offer you this score for free. I know I bank with certain institutions that give that to me for free. So you can ask your financial institution if they offer that, or alternatively, you can create a free account online with Experian, which is one of the major credit bureaus, and you can view your FICO score 8 there. Like I said, this is the most popular type of credit score that's used, so it's a really good baseline in determining where your score is at and where you'd like to go with that. So this is just a graphic in terms of understanding what your FICO score means. So when you get that score and you plug it in, you can see where on the spectrum that lands you. So we see that on the top end, we see that a score of 800 and above is an exceptional borrower. And toward the bottom, all the way on the red, we have 579 or less. So once you determine your score, you may want to create some kind of goal around improving that if that is what you would like to do. And there are several strategies you can implement to help build and maintain build or maintain a healthy credit score. Maybe you're happy with it and you just want to keep up the good work that you're doing to maintain your credit score. So that could also be a goal. And we want to really make sure this is important because bad credit can result in being denied for loans, less favorable terms, higher interest rates, higher, even security deposits and things like that when you're looking for housing. So credit is a very important thing to build and maintain, especially in our society. So those are the first two goals, specifically around cash flow and those fundamental basic needs. Now let's go into the next two goals, which are under financial security, kind of that second level of the pyramid. So this metric is saying I have enough money saved to cover X months of basic living expenses. So you want to take a look at your savings, whatever money you have set aside, and figure out, if your income was to stop or something like that, how many months would you be able to still continue your lifestyle, at least your necessary basic living expenses before running out of money? Financial security goals really help us focus on protecting our income and our assets. It helps us prepare for unforeseen events and risks. So as a safety cushion, an emergency fund, as we like to call it, should cover several months of living expenses in case of an accident, an unexpected health or family issue, a global pandemic where people are losing their jobs left and right, you name it. So an emergency fund, having some kind of cash cushion is very important to mitigate against those kinds of things. The pandemic really has taught us a lot, at least it's taught me a lot, in terms of making sure that we have enough cash set aside for emergencies. So a potential goal might be to increase your savings to 6 to 12 months, depending on your circumstances. What that number is going to be is going to differ from person to person, depending on your personal circumstances, what your financial responsibilities are. So there's no kind of one size fits all answer, but generally you'd want it to be around that 6-month mark so that in case anything tragic were to happen with your income, you still have something to fall back on and you can continue to live your life and meet your basic living expenses, at least until you give yourself some time to kind of get back up and find a new source of income. So that is one measure under financial security. The next is around insurance, which really focuses on protecting, again, your income and assets. So there are different types of insurance that you can get. Generally, insurance is there to cover infrequent but catastrophic events. So different types of insurance you might consider having if you don't already is life insurance. Life insurance is there to protect your loved ones if something were to happen to you, make sure they're able to continue living their lives. Disability insurance, if something happens to you or you can no longer work, how would you continue to support yourself and your responsibilities and your family? Then there's health insurance, of course, that helps to cover in case we become sick or anything like that. Home and renters insurance, if something catastrophic were to happen to our property, we want to be able to rebuild, replace, etc. And then auto insurance, similar concept. If something were to happen to the vehicle that we drive, which in a lot of cases is, in some cases, not so much these days, but typically is essential to, making a living and things that would, affect and put your basic living needs at risk, we want to make sure that that is protected in the event that anything happens to that vehicle. So a natural question might be, well, how much insurance do I even need in the first place? And the answer, a lot of times the answer in finance is it depends. The main question I ask myself in looking at this saying, well, I don't have this insurance, I don't have that insurance, do I need it? How much do I need? Is ask yourself, what would happen if something disastrous happened in any of these areas that are listed? How would it affect your finances? How would it affect the finances of your family or others who depend on you? And if the answer is that it would really put a really hard, hardship on you or those people who you care about and who you are responsible for, then you might want to consider having some type of insurance to protect against that. So insurance definitely plays a very important role in protecting our income and our assets. Now on to 5 and 6, the metrics we want to know. Number 5 is under accumulating wealth, that third layer of the pyramid. And this one is more specifically around debt. So you want to know how much debt you have. So let me be clear. Having debt in and of itself isn't inherently a bad thing. The issue is when your debt becomes unmanageable or too costly, or it becomes an elephant in the room that you'd rather ignore and end up paying no attention to. Debt can be really scary for a lot of people, and I understand that. And even the process of really just adding up that number can be really intimidating, but it's important for your overall financial health and charting a path forward. So I would challenge you, if you do have debt of any kind, to create a full inventory of your debt, who you owe it to, and your interest rates. And also get familiar with your repayment options, which will be different depending on the kind of debt that you have. For example, student loans can be a whole animal in and of themselves in terms of their repayment options and the way that they operate when compared to other types of debt. So you really want to understand what your options are, the total balance you have, who you owe it to, and those interest rates. And if you don't know what debt is out there, you don't know what kind of debt you have, this is the first time you're kind of putting this all together, a great place to check would be your credit report, because that report will contain essentially all of the debt that is out there, outstanding, that's tied to your social security number. So you can get your credit report for free from all three of the credit reporting agencies, which are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, if you go to annualcreditreport.com. And all the links that I mentioned in this presentation, I will have at the end in the resources section. And we'll make sure we get those emailed out to you so that you have access to those. But you can get your credit report for free at annualcreditreport.com. And why it's called annualcreditreport.com is because typically you get it for free one time every year. However, during the COVID pandemic, they have changed that where you can get it for free every single week if you would like to. And right now that is running through April of 2021. So definitely take advantage of that. If you want to check up on your credit report, just make sure that everything looks to be in order. You can also identify any potential errors that are on your credit report and mitigate those. So I would just recommend, while we have access to it on a more consistent basis, to check up on your credit maybe a little bit more often, especially right now with everything going on, stimulus checks, all kinds of things. Identity theft is on the rise, and fraudulent things happen every day. So it's just good practice overall to check up on your credit report every once in a while and make sure that everything is in good order. The next and last piece of information we want to know when assessing our financial health is around retirement. So this says I have blank, enter the number here, this amount of money invested for retirement, and at my current rate, I will be able to retire at age blank. So this really is just up to what you would like for your life, what age you'd like to retire, how much money you would like to have in retirement. And how you can find these numbers is, one, check to see how much money you currently have saved in your various retirement accounts, whether that's a 401k, an IRA, etc., or other assets that you might have outside of retirement accounts that you have earmarked for retirement. And to determine what age you'll be able to retire at that rate and at your current savings rate, there are various retirement savings calculators out there. So you can go there, and I have a couple linked in the resources as well, where you can mess with the different assumptions to give you a directional idea of where you might want to be. And you can put a lot of this information together, everything we've talked about kind of throughout these 6 steps, the savings, the debt you have, your retirement assets, things like that. You can put a lot of this information together on the net worth template that I mentioned towards the beginning of the presentation. And it's basically a complete inventory of what you own and what you owe. And it provides, like I said, a snapshot of your financial situation. So that can be a really great place to kind of summarize a lot of these metrics. So that is how we assess our financial health in 6 simple steps. And so now that you have a sense of how you're doing financially and some directional goals that you might want to set for yourself to improve or sustain your financial health, let's take it a step further and really fine tune those goals so that ultimately we'll be successful at achieving them. So what are SMART goals? SMART goals are goals that are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're time bound. And we'll break down each of these in more detail as we go along. We just wanted to make sure we define from the outset what we mean when we refer to SMART goals. So why most New Year's resolutions fail? I wanted to address this. Like I said, this is January, it's the beginning of the year. We're all setting these goals. We feel really excited about a lot of them and really motivated and pumped to get them done. But as we might know, most New Year's resolutions do fail. The vast majority do. And so we want to talk about why these things happen and what we can do to combat them and make sure that we are successful at achieving our smart money goals that we are going to form. The first reason is not knowing your why. We are making these goals, making these plans, but not really thinking about why am I even doing this in the first place? What is the driver? What is the motivating factor behind the decisions and the goals that I'm making? In this case, when it comes to finances, is it to leave a financial legacy for my family? Is my why to alleviate the stress that comes with poor financial health? Just focus on your why and align your goals to your values. The next thing is being in a rush. Don't treat a marathon like a sprint. Small changes are usually a lot easier to manage than drastic shifts. So don't try to change too many things at once, because that just leads to overwhelm and being unsuccessful in achieving your goals. Another reason why resolutions fail is that your goals aren't clear. And we're going to talk about, as we go through the SMART goals process, how to make your goals clearer. And the fourth reason is that you're just not ready for change. We have sometimes these lofty ideals, but they're not, they're not realistic. And we're going to talk about that as we go through the SMART goals process as well. So SMART goals really help to combat these issues. Now, when creating your smart money goals, you want to start with the end in mind. What are your high-level, broad goals? What is the end goal? So some examples might be financial freedom is your end goal. Buying your first home might be your end goal. Sending your kids to college might be your overarching goal. Becoming debt-free. These are just 4 examples of some high-level, broad goals. But what are the steps involved on the path to achieving those goals? So for example, if financial freedom is your ultimate high-level, broad goal, one step on the path to achieving this goal might be increasing your investments. And that gets it a little bit more specific, where you have something that's a little bit more actionable in getting to that overarching goal. For buying your first home, a step involved in that path might be increasing your credit score so that you are in a better position to get approved for your mortgage to buy your first home. Sending your kids to college, a step on the path to achieving this goal might be saving and investing through a 529 plan. Similarly, becoming debt-free. One step on the path to becoming debt-free might be cutting your expenses so you have more money to put toward debt. So this is just kind of how we back into our goals. We start with the broad, high level, what do we want to achieve? And then we can break it down into smaller goals, smaller steps that we can take in order to achieve those ultimate goals. So now let's boil down these goals even more through the SMART goals framework. The first thing that we said, of course, is that the goals should be specific. They should be clear, they should be well defined. The less vague or the broader your goals are, the less broad, your goals are, the more likely you will be to achieve them. So you want to get really specific with your goals. For example, if you have set a goal to improve your credit, a more specific goal than just saying, I want to improve my credit, might be, I want to pay my credit card balances on time, because that is something that will help me to improve my credit. So really boiling it down to specific, actionable goals. The next thing is measurable. That's the M in SMART goals. So really that answers the question, what does progress look like for this goal? Measure it. It needs to be measured in terms of something, whether that's dollars or units or occurrences, something that you can actually measure and is not necessarily, an ethereal kind of goal. So following on to the example of improving your credit, you might say, instead of just saying, I want to improve my credit, we then boiled it down to, I want to pay my credit card balances on time. Now we are saying we want to pay our credit card balances on time every month. So now it's easy to check the box to see if that goal was achieved. You can concretely say, last month, did I pay my credit card balances on time by the date it was due? Yes or no? It makes it a lot easier and more concrete. The A in SMART goals is attainable. Your goals must be realistic. ask yourself, do I have the resources necessary to achieve this goal? And that could be the time to achieve this goal, the skill to achieve this goal, the financial capacity to achieve this goal, whatever resources you need to achieve that goal. Really be honest with yourself and ask if you have the resources necessary to achieve the goal. Stretching yourself, having stretch goals, as they call it, stretching yourself a little is okay, but it doesn't help anyone to set super lofty goals that can't reasonably be attained. So for example, if your income is $1,000, but you set a goal to save $5,000, it's just not realistic and therefore unattainable. So you want to make sure that any goal you're setting is also realistic, that it's attainable, so that you don't, get burnt out or be overwhelmed because of this super lofty goal that you have set for yourself. Again, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So we want to make sure that we are setting goals that we can reasonably reach. Now for the R in SMART goals, which is relevance. Ask yourself, will this goal help me accomplish my overarching objective? So if this goal does not directly relate to my overall goals, it's not really relevant. And maybe it's not something that I should focus on because it's not helping me get to my end goal. And ask yourself also, relevancy can be in terms of, is it relevant for you? Is this my goal, or is this something else somebody told me that I should be doing? When you're making goals, you really have to adopt them for yourself and really believe in them for yourself, or else you're not going to be that motivated to actually achieve them. Again, going back to knowing your why. Your goals have to be relevant for you. So your goals might be influenced by your culture, your background, your religion, other factors, etc., but only you get to decide what your goals should be, and they shouldn't be defined by other people. So that is one really big factor in determining whether your goals are relevant. Not only do they have to be relevant to your overarching plan, but they have to be relevant to you and what you want out of your life and how your finances will help you achieve that goal for yourself. Another question with regards to relevance is, does this goal compete with other financial goals or priorities? Because in that case, it may not necessarily be as relevant. And that goes back to prioritization. So you don't want to set competing goals where then you kind of don't achieve any of them. You want to make sure that your goals are working in tandem, they're working together to get you to your final destination. And then also an important question is this goal applicable in the current socioeconomic environment? This is a really important question to ask. For example, in 2020, some people might have set a goal of paying off their student loans, and then COVID hit. And then we had this long period of forbearance where we weren't accruing any interest, there were no payments due. And many people then decided this goal is no longer relevant, because why would I put money out of my pocket for something that I don't owe right now? So paying off your student loans while in a period of 0% interest just no longer became a relevant goal for some people. And so they just, it's okay in that case to not necessarily achieve that goal because it is no longer relevant. It's no longer applicable to the current socioeconomic environment. So of course, I'm not advocating to not pay your student loans, but what a lot of people have been doing is they've been saving. So once the forbearance is over, they'll make a big payment and pay their loans down. So it's not that they're just neglecting it altogether. They're just not letting the cash leave their hands at this point, because for some people, it just doesn't make any sense. So that's relevance. And then the last thing in the SMART goals framework is the T, which is making your goals time bound, really answering the question of when, putting a time limit on it. So if we circle back to our earlier example on improving your credit, instead of saying, again, you just want to improve your credit, we've narrowed it down to, I want to pay my credit card balances on time. And you might just say for the rest of the year. That is time bound. In this session specifically, I know a lot of us are looking toward 2021 goals we want to achieve within this year. But also don't be afraid to boil it down even more specifically and say, instead of just saying by the end of the year, you can put earlier times and earlier goals, earlier timeframes that are, again, attainable, realistic. Make sure you have the necessary resources to achieve those goals. You can put a goal of, I want to pay off my credit card by June of 2021, for example. So you want to put a time limit, time bound on your goal to also make you more motivated to stick to that. Things with deadlines usually require a little bit more urgency in our brains. And so we'll be more motivated to actually achieve those goals. And so just to bring it all together, Just going to talk about a few examples of smart money goals. So just as an example, we have here start investing. That can be a little bit of a vague goal. A smarter goal would be invest 10% of my income through my 401k this year. So we see that goal is specific, it is measurable, 10%. It is attainable, assuming that you have the necessary income to support that goal. It is relevant because it feeds your end game of investing, and it is time bound. This year, this is the time that you want to, put in that 10% of your income. So just giving some examples of how we can take more vague goals and turn them into smarter goals. Another example could be saving and investing through a 529 plan. Even more specific and even smarter than that is, it's already kind of a smarter goal, but to make it even smarter, we can set a goal of opening a 529 account by March 2021. It's a very specific goal, very measurable. Did we open it or did we not? It's attainable. It's opening an account, usually a lower barrier to entry. Is it relevant? Yes, it's feeding your end goal, and it's time bound by March 2021. So this is just another example of a SMART goal. And lastly, a vague goal, we have cutting your expenses so you have more money to put toward debt. We can make that even more specific. We can say that at the end of this year's lease, we want to find a new apartment that costs no more than $1,500 per month. Very specific, measurable. We put a dollar limit on it. It's attainable because we're lowering our expenses. So assuming that's going to be attainable, and hopefully it is, depending on your area, whether that means you have to find a roommate or do different things to make that happen. But the point is you can make that happen. You can make it attainable. It needs to be, realistic. And it needs to be time bound. Like we said, at the end of this year's lease, we put a time limit on it. So these are just a few examples of how we can turn vague goals into SMART goals. And don't forget to prioritize your goals after you've made your goals using the hierarchy of financial needs as your guide. So you might have several goals. I would also not recommend having too many goals. A handful of goals is usually more than sufficient so that also you kind of keep your focus and you don't get overwhelmed by, 15, 20 goals that you'd like to achieve within a short time span. So I would prioritize those goals once you have them using the hierarchy of financial needs as a guide, making sure, again, that your foundation is taken care of, and then moving up the ladder to more advanced goals, your savings goals, your investing goals, paying down debt, those kinds of things. And now what do you do after you've set your SMART goals? Track your progress. It's really important to track your progress and see how you're doing so you know how to adjust as the year goes on. In this case, if we're making goals for 2021, it's important to have that accountability as well to yourself. Now, I have public accountability because I spill all of my personal finances all over the internet. So I have an army ready to hold me accountable to anything that I say or any goal that I put out there. But for you, you might want to do something like finding an accountability partner, whether that's in your personal life, a Facebook group, whatever you need to do to track your progress and have accountability. And that also goes into gaining social support if you need. Find your tribe, find a group of people who are thinking the same way as you, who are moving towards similar goals. You guys can encourage yourselves, encourage each other along the journey. Also realize that everything may not go as planned. As perfect as we think our goals are, life happens, and that's okay. So sometimes plans get derailed by unforeseen circumstances. Sometimes you realize that goal you thought was relevant and important isn't so important after all, and that's okay. Be kind to yourself. It's a pandemic, you guys. Be kind to yourselves and realize everything doesn't always go 100% as planned. But then, lastly, I would say after setting your goals is when you do achieve your goal, treat yourself a little bit and determine what that treat will be from the outset, right now as you're making those goals. Determine what your reward will be from the outset so that you also don't go completely off the edge when you finally achieve that goal. And now, you're feeling good and you might get yourself back into the hole you're trying to get out of. So treating yourself is also very important on this journey. Reaching your financial goals should not be a bore, a chore. It should be fun. You should have something to look forward to at the end of the day as you are working toward achieving your financial goals. It won't be easy, but hopefully this process will make it a little bit more achievable and attainable as you create your goals and achieve them through the year. So that's what I have for you. I would love for you guys to share in the chat your takeaways, what you learned today from today's session, and share the knowledge and share your takeaways with the rest of the group who is here. I would love to hear your takeaways. And now for that free gift, that free net worth template that I promised you guys. I have the QR code here and also the link. If you go to bit.ly/networth-template, you will find the net worth template there that you can download. So you can put in all your assets, your debt, like I mentioned there. And we will also share that link in the chat also while we are taking questions. So these are the resources that I mentioned, which we will circulate after the fact as well. And a way to stay in touch with me. We have, if you want to learn more about Ballantine Partners, the firm that I work with, we serve ultra high net worth and high net worth clients and their families. If you want to learn more about Ballantine, our website is there. You can find me on YouTube at The Bemuse, Instagram, my email is there. And also if you're interested in the Adulting Bootcamp, my program, like I said, where I work with young adults on achieving their financial goals and becoming more financially literate, the link is here, thebemuse.as.me, which I think we are also putting in the chat if you are interested in booking a call and learning more. And with that, I will start taking some questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Akeiva. I definitely, for myself, I was sharing with you beforehand, because of the temporary loan situation with student loans, I'm going to try to save up for a kitchen renovation, which I had no idea would be so expensive. So I'm sure others of you have very specific goals as well. And this definitely helped me frame what I need to do. And like Akeiva said, we will share those resources. They're in the chat, and also they will be in the follow-up email. So let's get to some questions. Okay, our first question. Thank you for bringing up student loans. I'm sure we all are feeling this. This person's current short-term financial goal is paying off student debt, and they have used the forbearance as an opportunity to, quote, save up to pay off a loan when forbearance ends. Do you have any insight into paying down student loan debt and the possibility of the $10,000 student loan forgiveness?
Love it. I love that question. And before I start answering questions, let me just preface by saying I will be answering these questions in general terms, not giving specific advice, but hopefully something that will help. And if I do not get to your question or you have follow-up questions, feel free to email me and I can point you to helpful resources. Let me start by saying that, reach out anytime. But in terms of the likelihood of the student loan forgiveness, I was kind of having this conversation earlier, is that we really will have to wait and see. I think there's a strong possibility that the student loan forbearance will continue based on what Biden's team has said, his transition team has said that it's going to be a priority for him to extend the forbearance. However, student loan forgiveness is yet to be determined. We know that it will likely have to be a congressional progress and a process, and who knows what they're ever going to vote on or decide on. So I wouldn't necessarily bank on that just yet, but I'm definitely keeping my ear out to hear what are the updates. I'm certainly hoping for one. You guys know how much student loan debt I have, so I'm certainly hoping for some, but we'll see what happens.
Only the future will tell.
Only the future will tell.
Another debt repayment question. Capitalized interest, again, in regards to student loans. Could you please elaborate on what exactly this is? Should loans with capitalized interest have priority over those that do not?
That's a good question. So capitalized interest is essentially as interest accrues on your account, there are certain times when that interest will then be added to your principal and essentially make the principal balance of your loan larger. So say when you came out of school, you took out a $20,000 loan, $2,000 of interest has accrued, and now it is time for the government to capitalize that interest. Your new principal balance, so the balance that the new interest will be, calculated off of is a larger number. They've added now your interest to your principal balance. So that's what capitalization is about. In general, I have a whole video, so just email me and I'll send you a link to that video. It's one of the most popular videos on our channel in terms of the specific ways and strategies that you can use to prioritize your debt payoff, which loans you should pay off in which order. We have a video all about that. So let me know and I can definitely point you to that video instead of explaining. So it'll take a little bit of time in terms of the strategy for that.
That sounds like an excellent resource, especially as many of us have multiple loans of different um, types, sizes, and
Mhm.
interest rates. You mentioned this briefly, but one of the pre-submitted questions was, how should I be thinking about changing my SMART goals over time as the world changes? So how long should that time, that T of the SMART be?
Yeah, great question. So like we said, there are certain goals where, right now they make sense. They're relevant to what's going on in the world right now. They're relevant to your current situation, your current family situation. But your goals should definitely change and evolve with you as your life changes, as the world changes. So don't be afraid to update your goals if they no longer make sense, either because of the state of the economy or the world, or, changes in laws or things like that that would affect those goals, and make them, subject to change, or maybe they're no longer relevant, or even just personal changes where you might have had a goal of saving up a certain amount of money, and then surprise, now you're having another child or something like that that requires a shift in your attention to maybe a different goal. So don't be, afraid of changing those goals and having them grow as you grow and as your situation changes.
Excellent. All right, we'll ask another pre-submitted question here about a different kind of debt. Speaking about credit card debt, again, one that I'm sure many of us are familiar with. Do you have any suggestions on what percentage of our income should we use when we're paying off credit card each month?
So that again is a personal question. I don't subscribe to percentages, those kind of percentage rules for different things. That's just not the way that I operate. But I would say that, as if paying off your credit card is what is a paramount goal for you, you've prioritized that as kind of one of your most important goals, then your budget, your situation, your expenses should, your income, whatever you're doing to make sure that's done, whether that's increasing your income, cutting your expenses, or just out of your regular monthly income, it should reflect as such. So I wouldn't say there's a specific percentage of your income that you should or should not be putting. It really depends on one, what your income is. It will depend on how much money you have to put toward that goal. But I think it really just comes down to your personal preference, and if you've prioritized it, just finding ways within your income, within your budget, whether that's cutting expenses or increasing income, to prioritize that goal.
I'm sure your worksheet will help with that. You can really, once you put it on paper and you see what your interest rate is and your
Mhm.
balance is, you might say, oh, actually, I should really focus on paying
Exactly.
this one down.
Exactly.
This is another good question submitted from our live audience. What criteria would you say is important in selecting a financial advisor?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I think first and foremost, it should be someone who you can personally trust. A financial advisor is a very important relationship. As much as, a doctor or anyone who gets into the intimate details of your life, your financial advisor will be part of very intimate details of your life. So I think it's really important that you choose someone that you can trust, that you really get along with, that you is on your team, and that really will, push you to be your best financial self at the end of the day. You don't want to choose someone that is, contradicts kind of your values alignment, that doesn't necessarily respect your culture or your values or things like that. In terms of more of the minutia, I guess, in terms of the practical aspects, you want to make sure that the way the financial advisor makes their money is in line with what you're comfortable with. Because financial advisors make money in a variety of different ways. There are advisors who only charge what we call fee only, which is essentially a flat fee or a fixed fee, or some stated number that you can know and expect to pay, and that is the only way they're compensated. There are other financial advisors who get kickbacks from if they sell you like a life insurance policy or something like that, where they get a kickback based on that. Some advisors who get a kickback based on the specific type of investments that they recommend for you. So you just want to really understand how the advisor is paid and make sure that there's no right or wrong, but make sure that you're comfortable with that philosophy. You also want to make sure this person is competent. So there are many ways to do that. You want to do background, look into their background. You want to look at their experience, look at their credentials. One of the most kind of the gold star credential in the financial advising industry is the Certified Financial Planner, CFP designation. And so that's definitely something you want to look for. If you have a specific need, for example, you might have special need or a child with special needs, or you're specifically looking for someone who has really deep expertise in student loans or another area, there are lots of other designations and work experiences that will lend to that. So really, you can, pretty much find anyone that you need that will help out, but you just want to make sure you're the right fit for that person and they're the right fit for you.
Is it normal to ask for referrals for someone who would be a financial advisor?
You said it's normal to ask for referrals?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you could ask for referrals. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I have a lot of people who, come to me all the time and we have a conversation and we determine our firm isn't necessarily the best fit, but I'm happy to recommend, other advisors or people in the industry who we think might be a better fit. So definitely. And also
Excellent.
make
So
sure that they're not getting kickbacks for those referrals either.
well,
We
there
don't.
could be that too.
Just by the way, we don't. But just make sure they're also
today's
not,
loyalty market.
Exactly.
Another question, at what point should you consider using a financial advisor? Is there a life event that could trigger this?
That's a great question. I think it comes down to a couple of things. One, how much time do you have? There's some people who, they don't necessarily, the complexity doesn't necessarily demand a financial advisor. They're at the stage of life where they can really handle things themselves, but they just don't want to. They're just not interested in that. And that's okay. And that's where they want to reach out and find, a professional who will kind of help and handhold and do the things for them they just aren't interested in doing. That's totally okay. But in general, if you're more of a do-it-yourselfer, kind of like I am, I would say until you kind of get to the point where you feel like you don't have the necessary knowledge or skills to tackle a certain portion of your, new circumstances come up in your life that you don't feel prepared to deal with, I would at least consult a financial educator, or if you would like more detailed help, one-on-one, kind of more white glove service, that's where you go to a financial advisor. But in general, if you have a pretty simple situation, there are lots of things that you can learn online through lots of competent people, financial advisors who do put out content, financial educators who put out content similar to how we do, that you can learn about some of these things for yourself without having to necessarily pay for a financial advisor.
That's a good plug for this next question. Could you just go back one slide, Akeiva, so people can see your links on your slide? We did put them in the chat, but might be helpful for folks. So as you can see, she's got a great YouTube channel with lots of great insight into some of these questions that were already asked. Feel free to check that out. And I'm sure there's plenty more on YouTube that you can learn. Yes. What can't you learn on YouTube? But we can vet Akeiva. So there you go. And then let me ask another question from our pre-submitted question. If this person went recently from working for a company to being self-employed and is wondering what to do with their 401k, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, first of all, congratulations. Becoming a full-time entrepreneur is a very big leap. So congratulations on that. In terms of what to do with your retirement plan, again, it depends. I know I say that a lot, but it's really true. It depends on a few different factors. A couple things that I'd want to ask myself or research or keep in mind are one, the fees. So a lot of times the investments you can access through your 401k may or may not be, cheaper to access through kind of those group plans versus rolling your 401k into like an IRA or something like that. So you want to look at the investment options, look at the fees, and see what makes sense from an investment and fee perspective. That's one consideration. Other ancillary considerations might be, legal protection. 401ks and IRAs have slightly different legal protections and things like that. But I think the most important factors to consider would be those investment options and fees, just to make sure you're still having access to really great investments or better investments if you can roll it elsewhere.
Excellent. All right, we'll take one more question. We have time for one more question that we received from our live audience. And the question is, thinking about going to grad school, hopefully it's at Bentley. The question is, what else should I take into account?
When going to grad school, though, there's a lot to take into account. That's a very loaded question. There's definitely the money part that you definitely want to take into account. How are you going to finance your education, whether that's through scholarships or through student loans or through, employer assistance, which can be really clutch in some cases if your employer is willing to pay for a part of your education. So financing, how you're going to finance it is a really big aspect. There's, of course, also the time commitment that's involved with going to school, how that will affect other things in your life, such as being able to work. Well, you need to cut down your hours, or you need to not work entirely. And that also feeds into, of course, your finances and what you'll need to plan for. So those are just some of the things that I would, really strongly consider, because going to grad school is a large time and financial commitment. So you want to make sure that you're absolutely ready to take that on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Akeiva. We're so glad to have you today and have you share all of your insight into helping us set up some great goals for this coming year. Do you have any parting thoughts?
Not necessarily. I'll just say reach out anytime. My virtual door is always open. If you want to email me or DM me on Instagram or comment under a video, we answer every single comment under our YouTube videos. We try to get back to our DMs and emails as soon as possible. So if you have any outstanding questions on anything money related, even if I can't answer, I can be a resource to refer you to someone who can. So feel free to reach out at any time. And I'm excited to have been spent this hour with you guys. So thank you for being here.
Likewise. Thank you. And as mentioned, we did just get one more question about, will this presentation be shared? Yes, we've recorded today's session and we will share it with you. Also, Akeiva's personal contact information, so you can reach out as she's given some of the ways to find her already. So thank you again. Hope all of you have a great afternoon and we look forward to seeing you again soon.